I had no idea you were planning to visit today. If we had known. Majesty? Professor Kethmore's voice cracked slightly. The woman's gaze swept the classroom with clinical efficiency before settling on her son. I was in the sector for a diplomatic summit and thought I'd check on Alex's progress. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Zixtar, who had been mid-taunt when the door opened, looked like he was about to molt from pure terror. Did he say Majesty? Principal Korthval cleared his throat nervously. Class, please allow me to introduce Her Imperial Majesty, Queen Catherine Harrison of the Terran Colonial Empire. She rules over 347 star systems, commands the largest merchant fleet in known space, and chairs the Galactic Economic Council. The silence that followed was so complete that the classroom's ventilation system sounded like a thunderstorm. Alex's mother smiled the same gentle smile she wore when helping him with homework or making his favorite pancakes. "Hello, sweetheart," she said warmly to Alex. "How was your presentation going?" Velsira, whose species processed information at superhuman speeds, was the first to fully comprehend the situation. The primitive human boy they had been tormenting was the crown prince of the most economically powerful empire in the galaxy. The backward species they mocked controlled interstellar trade routes that could make or break entire civilizations. We were just. Zixtar's bioelectric abilities flickered and died as his nervous system overloaded with stress. Queen Catherine turned her attention to the young Draconian with the kind of smile that made experienced diplomats break out in cold sweats. "You were just what, young man? Please, don't let my presence stop you from continuing your conversation with my son. Your son was telling us about human achievements, Your Majesty." Professor Kethmore interjected quickly, throwing Zixtar a warning look that could have stopped a supernova. "How wonderful," the Queen replied. "Alex is quite knowledgeable about his heritage. Did you know that human diplomatic corps have prevented 14 major wars in the past decade alone? Or that human agricultural innovations feed over 60% of the galaxy's population?" She moved through the classroom with casual grace, her presence making each student acutely aware of how their family's fortunes depended on maintaining good relations with the Terran Empire. "Of course," she continued conversationally, "humans have always believed that true strength comes from building others up, rather than tearing them down. It's a philosophy that has served us quite well in both diplomacy and business." The implied threat was subtle but unmistakable. Every major corporation, every trade agreement, every economic alliance in the galaxy had human involvement. Queen Catherine wasn't just Alex's mother. She was one of the most powerful individuals in known space. Alex watched in amazement as his tormentors transformed before his eyes. Zixtar was practically groveling, apologizing for any misunderstandings about human capabilities. Velsira's crystalline form had dimmed to almost invisible levels as she tried to disappear into her desk. The other students looked like they were calculating exactly how much trouble they might be in if word of their behavior reached their parents. "Alex," his mother said gently, "why don't you finish your presentation? I'd love to hear about human achievements from your perspective." For the first time in 3 months, Alex smiled at the front of a classroom. As he resumed his presentation, every word met with respectful attention and careful note-taking from students who had ignored him moments before. He realized something important. His mother's title hadn't changed who he was. It had simply revealed who he had always been. The problem wasn't that he was different from his classmates. The problem was that they had never bothered to look beyond their own prejudices to see his true worth. After the presentation, as Queen Catherine prepared to leave, she pulled Alex aside for a private moment. "You don't need my title to be valuable," she whispered. "You're remarkable because of who you are, not because of who I am. Don't let anyone, including yourself, forget that." As she left, Alex returned to his desk to find his classmates suddenly very interested in forming study groups and planning social events. But now he understood something his mother had been trying to teach him all along. Respect earned through fear was worthless compared to respect earned through character. The bullying stopped immediately, but more importantly, Alex had learned to stand up for himself, not because he was a prince, but because he was worth defending. Marcus Chen stood at the observation window of the Galactic Orphanage Station, watching as another prospective family walked away from the nursery section. The disappointed expressions on their faces told the same story he'd witnessed 17 times this month. Inside the specialized containment unit lay Zephyr, a small, wrinkled creature with mottled purple skin, 6 eyes arranged in an uneven pattern, and tentacle-like appendages that twitched nervously whenever strangers approached. "Another rejection," whispered Nurse Velkara, her blue-skinned Andromedan features creasing with sympathy. The crystalline couple from Vega Prime said his appearance was unsettling to their younglings. Marcus pressed his palm against the cool glass. As the station's xenobiologist, he'd been studying Zephyr's species, the Keth Mori, for 3 months since the infant's rescue from a destroyed research vessel. What others saw as grotesque, Marcus recognized as evolutionary marvel. Those 6 eyes could perceive 17 different light spectrums. The tentacles were incredibly sensitive sensory organs capable of detecting molecular changes in the atmosphere. The mottled skin could actually shift colors for camouflage, though Zephyr hadn't learned to control this ability yet. Dr. Chen, Administrator Veltar, approached on his 8 legs, his insectoid features clicking with concern. "The High Council is pressuring us again. Zephyr has been here longer than any other ward. If no family claims him soon." The unspoken threat hung in the air. Marcus knew what happened to unadoptable alien children. They were transferred to research facilities, or worse, simply disposed of as resources became scarce. That evening, Marcus found himself in his quarters, staring at the adoption papers he'd been carrying for weeks. His wife Sarah had died in a shuttle accident 2 years ago, leaving him alone on the station. They'd always planned to have children, but the universe had other plans. Perhaps this was fate's way of giving him a second chance and giving Zephyr his first real one. The next morning, Marcus walked into Administrator Veltar's office and placed the completed adoption forms on the desk. "You cannot be serious." Veltar's antennae twitched frantically. "A human adopting a Keth Mori? The biological incompatibilities alone." "I've run all the tests," Marcus interrupted. "With proper environmental controls and nutritional supplements, there's no reason this can't work. I've been caring for him scientifically for months. Now I want to care for him as a father." The next few weeks were a bureaucratic nightmare. The Galactic Adoption Council questioned Marcus's sanity, his credentials, and his motives. Fellow humans called him foolish. Other species whispered about the human who wanted to raise a monster. But Marcus persevered, and finally, Zephyr came home. The early days were challenging. Zephyr communicated through a complex series of color changes and tentacle movements that Marcus slowly learned to interpret. The infant required a specialized diet of mineral-rich solutions and could only sleep in a humidity-controlled environment. Most visitors to their quarters recoiled at Zephyr's appearance, but Marcus saw past the surface to the intelligent, curious being within. As months passed, Zephyr began to thrive. His tentacles would wrap gently around Marcus's fingers during feeding times. His skin would shift to warm golden hues when he was happy, usually when Marcus sang old Earth lullabies that somehow soothed the alien child. The 6 eyes would track Marcus's movements with obvious affection and recognition. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's child psychologist, became a regular visitor. Initially skeptical, she was amazed by the bond developing between the unlikely pair. "I've never seen anything like it," she told Marcus one day, as they watched Zephyr play with a holographic puzzle designed for his species. His cognitive development is accelerating beyond normal parameters for Keith Morey. The emotional stability you're providing is remarkable." Marcus smiled as Zephyr's tentacles danced excitedly, having solved the complex geometric problem. "Love doesn't require matching DNA," he said simply. The real test came when Zephyr turned 2 in Earth years. A delegation of purebred Keith Morey arrived at the station survivors from